Like many families, the Colorado Republican Party tends to have its fights and meltdowns in public. Today, one faction of the party served another faction of the party with a lawsuit at an IHOP restaurant. As diners in Greenwood Village enjoyed the breakfast faves combo, the house scramble, and the pancake of the month, one candidate for the Colorado GOP chair dropped a double stack of litigation on the plate of a rival. This stems from the Republican Civil War over whether to replace current state chairman Dave Williams, who is accused of misusing party funds for his failed GOP primary bid for Congress and for the hassle he created for Colorado Republicans with his call to burn all pride flags. But back to the IHOP, home of the new spicy shredded beef anytime tacos, where the spicy lawsuit served this morning shreds the Republicans who tried unsuccessfully to force out Chairman Williams. She got Darcy Schoening, current party leader who's running for chair in next month's elections, who served papers this morning on Brita Horn, a rival candidate for chair who was part of the uprising. They were both at the IHOP for interviews with the local talk radio show doing a live broadcast from the Pancake House. Neither woman waffled when I reached out to him today. Schoening says Horn stole money from party donors. Horn called it a frivolous attack. You may recall the Colorado GOP has a bit of a history of airing its grievances at random businesses in the suburbs. In 2022, we dubbed it the Boot Barn Rebellion, when the faction of the GOP that's now in control was on the outside. They got turned away from the Republican Party offices, so they stood in the parking lot of the Western Wear Outfitter nearby, hollering that their party leaders were whores.
We have a Republican Party that is full of whores. They've not held to the U.S. Constitution. And then you wonder why these can't win a race.
Those Boot Barn rebels now lead the Colorado Republican Party, leading us to this morning's IHOP dust-up. So if you're buying boots or breakfast in the suburbs and you hear ruckus, might just be Colorado Republicans working things out.
Oh, Comrade Kyle enjoying the fodder provided for him with all the clever writing there on 9 News. And we had to get to the bottom of these details. And why not turn to Darcy Schoening? She was mentioned in that story on 9 News. She joins us now on Ryan Schuiling Live. Darcy, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
What happened at the IHOP in Greenwood Village? It's not far from where I live.
Yes, that day I was on Jeff and Bill, and Brita Horn was all Jeff. And Brita has unfortunately been evading service for quite some time. So I knew she was going to be there, and I went ahead and served her the papers. And Kyle Clark just really loved it. I got to give him credit. That's some really good writing.
It was humorous, but there's obviously a serious motive behind this in your confrontation of Brita Horn and what went down. And as I recall it, and you can fill in the details because you know a lot more from the inside than I do from the outside, but Brita was part of a rebellion. Eli Brummer was another name I remember at that time that were looking to remove Dave Williams and go through the protocols by which that could happen. And Dave Williams was resisting that. Can you take us back to that point in time? What was going on in the party as you saw it?
Yeah, sure. So they were not happy with leadership. That was Eli Brummer, Todd Watkins, and Brita Horn. So they were not happy with a meeting that Hope scheduled out in Bayfield. They wanted another meeting, so they scheduled a meeting in Castle Rock. They met. They did not have the quorum that was required. So if you're going to change leadership, you have to have 2/3 of the whole body there. 2/3 of the whole body was not there. But they did not read that bylaw correctly, as the judge later determined, and they ran without leadership. So for a couple weeks, there was leadership, and then there was kind of a rogue leadership team. And, listen, like I said, I don't hold anything against these people. I don't want Brita out of the party. I don't want Eli out of the party. That's not what this is. But what this is we as a party, we can't just sue anytime that we don't like the bylaws or we feel someone is not doing something correctly. We have to follow the processes that we have internally, because if we don't, then we're going to really destroy ourselves. And we did. I mean, that was over $100,000 that was literally allocate its candidates for critical races. I helped raise that money. And I had to call these candidates and tell them, hey, Rebecca, I'm sorry. I know I told you that you have money coming, but you don't. And we can't operate that way. So this isn't personal. It's not like, I want to personally ruin these people, but the party needs to be made whole again. When $100,000 of donor money that was given to elect candidates and to keep the lights on is taken in that manner, and the judge determines that it was not the rightful way to do things, we have to either have that money paid back, or I'm fine if there's an alternative solution. If Dave and Brita and Todd Watkins want to come volunteer 10 hours a week for the next 6 months just to pay those donors back and strengthen our party and rebuild that trust, I'm totally okay with it. But it's just about making the party whole again. We can't operate like that.
She's Darcy Schoening. She's a candidate for the Colorado State GOP Chair. It is a fractured party, to put it mildly, at the moment. So, Darcy, you take this action. You're saying it's not personal, but it's actually a long-term play to make the party whole again and bring people back together. So you mentioned the money being returned, but what exactly would be the remedy that you feel would be substantial and satisfactory, serving her with these papers, and where does it go from here?
Well, like I said, just something, Ryan. I think a lot of us, even an apology would go a long way. That was a really traumatic time for our party, no matter which side of the party that you're on. And the purpose of serving those papers, the purpose of making sure that this happens, is because in a couple months when I'm chair, this is what I'm going to tell people. We can't have lawsuits like this. We will be dead as a party within years if this is how we're going to do things. So let's use this lawsuit. This is the last one, okay? There's going to be no more. Because let's use this as an example to show what it really did. It caused so much more division. It took candidate funds and didn't accomplish anything.
Darcy Schoening, our guest. There's 3 PRs that I think you subscribed to, Darcy, in the course of your race, and we both spoke at the same event for the Log Cabin Republicans. For me, what it's about, and that's being practical, being pragmatic, and going through this entire list of priorities with principles. So I guess there's 4 PRs there, and that you are a principled person. I don't think anybody would dispute that. But where I have a problem, I'm just going to call it like the horse race portion of this, is the practical, pragmatic part of it. And I'll just go to the U.S. House races, because those were front and center the last time around. Dave Williams himself ran against Jeff Crank in the primary. He lost. Crank won the seat. A tremendous candidate in Gabe Evans ran in the 8th district, a pivotal swing district. He would end up winning that, but Williams backed a losing horse in Janet Joshi. That was another one. Then there was a third example. In the 3rd district that Lauren Boebert departed, went over to the 4th. She won. Jeff Hurd was running in a primary against Ron Hanks. Dave Williams backed Hanks. That was the losing horse. Hurd would go on to win. Now we have, in Colorado, by some miracle, 4 Republican representatives in the U.S. House to 4 for the Democrats in what is an overwhelmingly blue state. I guess where I'm going with this is, are you going to have that mission in mind of identifying winning candidates, backing the right horses, and making sure the funds that you talk about are going to those candidates?
Yeah, for sure. So, and I've addressed this on a couple of shows this week. It's really important to me that we have primary neutrality. I did put out an amendment that I plan to present to the body after I am elected chair. And Ryan, I worked so hard on the candidate initiative last year. And literally when I had to call people like Stan Vanderwerf and Rebecca Kelty and explain, look, there's no money left because the party's been too busy fighting with itself.
Right.
I wanted to throw up. I could have cried, because it's just, this is not how we are supposed to be operating, and it's not necessary. And those candidates that ran in those congressional districts, I believe if you ask them, and I think that they have said it in multiple areas, I was there for them. And I did work to get them the data that they needed, and I carried some ballots for Gabe. And, being a party isn't about picking the best Republican candidates in the primary. It's about putting the information out there to the voters so that they can make the best decisions.
And I think that leads me to my last question here, Darcy, and I'm just kind of relaying information that I've accumulated through the many different people that I talk to in the party. And as you know, I'm a big supporter of the Colorado Republican Party, and I want us to win. So with that prefaced, there's a perception out there, and I think in light of this story that we're talking about at the IHOP, that you got one kind of rebellious faction of Brita Horn, Eli Bremer, and you mentioned some others, Todd Watkins, and then we have kind of what has been the established power dynamic, which is Dave Williams, Hope Scheppelman, whom I know somewhat, but not really well personally, and yourself, and that people would view you like as more of the same with Dave Williams. But I'm hearing a much different tune that you're singing than the leadership that Dave Williams exhibited. And I guess I'm just asking you to tell our listeners right now, kind of bullet point fashion, where you are most different from Dave Williams in your leadership style, approach, and strategy.
Well, I mean, we are totally different people. While we have similar conservative values, we don't manage things the same way. I mean, there were a lot of things at the party that I wanted to do that, you know, they're just not on Dave's agenda. And there were things that Dave did that I didn't necessarily agree with. So, you know, my entire platform is based on building an infrastructure that we'll have for generations to come. It's based on getting candidates elected, and it's based on some really strong fundraising. And that's where a chair should be focused. I'm not as focused on the internal workings of the party or, you know, securing my leadership team seats for the next couple years. Not that that's where Dave's focused, but I don't focus on the internal division or the internal politics of politics. I'm about advancing the state and getting Republicans elected. That's what I've been doing for years, and that's what I'll continue to do. And one thing people will tell you about me is I do what I say I'm going to do, and you always know where you stand with me. So, I think that we just need to move forward. And these lawsuits, they've got to stop. So once I'm elected, we'll discuss the current lawsuit further, and we're going to see what the body wants to do. You know, if the body comes back and says that they know better and they don't want to pursue this, then that's a whole other story. They won't. 2/3 of the body tends to vote with that block. So there will be some outcome, but we'll be fair about it. And we'll continue to work with Brita and Todd and Eli. As a matter of fact, I plan to personally call them and welcome them to the new GOP and figure out what their place is.
Her last name is 9 letters long. You switch out the middle 3 and put in UIL. You got my last name. Darcy Schoening joining us here on Ryan Schuiling Live, and she's a candidate for the Colorado Republican Chair. Darcy, what I appreciate most about you, you're very accessible. Trent Lisey's doing a great job with you and connecting you with the media and, more importantly, to the listeners and voters of Colorado. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your detailed answers and explanations, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for all you're doing.
All right, Darcy Schoening right there, and we're going to reach out to Brita Horn as well to get her side of the story. Kyle Clark's just having a little bit too much fun at our expense. That's what I'll say. And it was clever, and it was funny, and I got to give a tip of the cap to Comrade Kyle, but you know that he takes great delight and glee, and to borrow a German word from Kelly Kuchera, because that's her language, her native tongue, almost, there's a lot of schadenfreude when it comes to Comrade Kyle on all of this. And we got to nip that in the bud. A final time out here in hour number 1. We'll wrap up with your text 57739 before we jet ahead into hour number 2 here on RSL 630.